Mark, I'd like to record it also, but I need your permission.
How do I?
Well, we'll actually, can I just, this is a little bit early to say it, but with Mark recording it, what will happen is if Leif, you are in agreement with this, it will be posted on the Pointe Center for the Arts website, which is our fiduciary for our book club.
Okay.
And that way people who are not able to make it tonight can see the book club meeting at a different time.
Sure,
Great.
yeah, that's a great idea.
But
Yeah.
now,
Okay.
who said they wanted to record it?
We've done that for our past 3 book club meetings, and I have to say yours, this is the first one I'm actually participating in real time in myself. So
Okay.
we appreciate that you're willing to have us do that.
Oh yeah, not a problem. That's a good idea.
I would be able to send it out to anybody who wants it too, right?
Well, Joe is our techie, so he'll have to help us know the answer to that question.
Yeah, Mark, you could. It's a slightly large file when you do record for an hour. That's why it's good to put it on a website and let people listen to it on the website.
But somebody
technically
asked
you could,
if they could record it. Who was that?
Rick.
Oh, Ricky. And you said I needed to give you permission. I don't know how to do that.
Well, no, when I hit record, I get a message and it says, please request permission from the meeting host. So just say okay.
Oh, you mean I just have to say okay? Okay.
Do I have permission?
Yep.
I'm not quite sure that's how it works.
I thought I had to push another button or something.
Maybe you do, but we tried.
Give it a try. We got more people. Jane Gardner.
Yes.
Good to see you. Are you?
I'm here in the island.
Okay, good. And then Lori Hilmer, you're here, aren't you?
I am here, and I am not on the island. I will be on Friday, but right now I'm in St. Charles, Minnesota, near Rochester. I heard Rochester mentioned. So
Yeah, who's where? Sorry, I missed that.
Lori Hilmer is at St. Charles.
Oh my goodness.
Which is near Rochester. That's where Marcia and Burke Henry are, and along with them is Margie Smith.
Yep.
Very nice.
Yep.
Nice to meet you.
You guys are far flung.
My husband is actually here too. Craig Hilmer, he's trying to work on a patio project that he's trying to finish and listen to this discussion at the same time.
Oh,
that's why you're outside.
Yeah.
Okay, Nancy and Bill Jones, hello. Oh, there you go.
Hi, Nancy. Hi, Bill.
Hi. Nice to see you all.
Yep. And they are on the island, as is Debbie Knopf over here.
Yeah.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
Debbie.
Gee, Debbie, you're so far away.
I know, we're down the driveway.
And then Deb, you're here.
I'm here from Bemidji, at home in Bemidji. My husband's over in the island again on B-Dock.
Oh, okay. Well, good to see you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here and to have Leif with us.
Well, what is your boat name, Deb?
The name is Saber, but it's not on the boat yet. It won't go on until it's out of the water this year. But it's a Valiant 40, B-Dock 34.
Oh, Valiant 40, that's a lot of boat. That's a nice.
Yeah. My husband's been working on it for 2 years to kind of.
Hey, there we got Betsy and Jim.
Yeah.
Hello.
Because we finished our broccoli, so we could be with you.
Betsy and Jim. It's Lori Hilmer. I haven't seen you since last year.
Oh,
hi.
Nice.
I haven't seen you either.
A lot of us haven't seen each other because of social distancing, I guess.
Right.
I'm really
Lynn is with us.
So
yeah, Lynn Levitsky. You're here from Boston, right? Lynn? Lynn Levitsky. She's frozen.
She's right there.
She doesn't, it's not, I think she's frozen.
Yeah, she's stuck.
Pat Spalding, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. But I'm not on the island.
Hi, Pat. Nice
Yeah, where are you, Pat?
I'm at home, but we'll be back on the island in a week.
And I forget where home is.
Hi, Pat.
Minneapolis.
Yeah, Minneapolis. Okay. Lynn disappeared, but she'll be back, I'm sure. So we probably should start. I'm going to turn it over to, thank you all for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Susie. She has some welcoming remarks.
Well, I want to welcome you all to the last of our summer book club meetings. And it's great to see so many of you here on Zoom. We had a little discussion as the four of us that are your leaders, had a little discussion about the fact that Zoom has made it possible for all of us to come together from loads of different places. Some people haven't made it to the island at all this summer. And it made us realize that maybe this is our summer year to re-expand the book club. A few years ago, we made the decision to only be a summer book club because there were so few attendees in the fall and winter months. But with Zoom, everybody can continue to attend. So we are curious to know, those of you who are participating this evening, if that is something that you would be interested in doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so what I think what we will do is, because we don't have a reading list, because we had the reading list for the summer, we would like to suggest that our October meeting will be everybody chooses whatever they want to read, and they can share a little bit of that. And in the meantime, submit some titles that you think would be nice to read over the winter months, and we'll set it out, as we always do, for a democratic vote to see what books people are interested in going forward to May. Okay?
Okay. I'd like to read Leif's book. I'm going to read Leif's
Yeah,
next
you
book.
don't have to mail in your ballot. You can email.
Okay.
So that we'll send out a request for you guys to send in ideas and names, authors, a little bit about what the book is about, fiction, nonfiction, because we like to read a mixture of those things, and we'll take it from there. We'll continue the third Tuesday, and then we'll come up with our summer reading list too. So that's kind of the business of the book club for this evening. And the library is on board. So those of you who are still here on Madeline, you'll be able to go to the library and get your copies of the books in print, large print, or audio file, as you always have done. So actually, a reminder as to the guideline of the books, they should all be at least 1 year old so that the library can acquire them for us. Anybody have any questions or anything else they would like to share?
No.
All right, I'm going to turn it back to Mark so he can introduce us to this evening's author, who is wonderfully present for us to all hear.
Thank you,
and I
Susie.
think if you have questions, yeah, and you'll explain what to do with questions if there are additional questions, or Leif will explain, right? Okay. I'll mute myself now.
Susie, thank you, Susie. We received several questions for Leif, and so I forwarded them on to him, and he will attempt to address those in his remarks. If there are any that he misses, we can catch those up in the Q&A. So we'll also have a follow-up Q&A session for any more questions that you might have. It's a real pleasure, a real pleasure to welcome Leif to the book club tonight. As a fellow Minnesotan, especially, I am enjoying welcoming him. Leif grew up in Osakis, Minnesota, which is in central Minnesota, about an hour northwest of St. Cloud. He graduated from Minnesota State University at Moorhead in 1983. And after that, he worked for NPR for 16 years out of the Brainerd studio. And so some of you may, especially you Minnesotans, may know him from NPR. I know I remember him well. He and his wife, Robin, lived on a farm near Aiken, Minnesota, where they raised their 2 sons. Leif told me last week that his oldest son works for Google in New York City, and the youngest, following in Leif's footsteps, works for NPR in Bemidji.
Oh, wow.
You may have heard John Enger on NPR in more recent years. More recently, Leif and Robin moved to Duluth, and as he mentioned earlier, he has a sailboat in Bayfield. He's written several novels. During the 1990s, Leif and his brother wrote 6 mystery books. And then in 2001, Leif's best-selling novel, Peace Like a River, was published. That was followed by So Brave, Young, and Handsome in 2008.
Disappeared now.
And then Virgil Wander, our book, in 2018. Currently, Leif is working on the second draft of a book about Lake Superior. So now I'm going to turn it over to Leif. He can tell us more about himself and his what inspires him to write, and maybe what he's thinking about for the future.
Can everybody please mute unless you're doing it, Mark, mute your microphone so people can have, they're quiet while Leif is talking. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I really appreciate your asking me to drop in on the book club. It's a silver lining of COVID-19 that it's suddenly become so much easier, I think, to just drop in on a book club this way. It's not like you couldn't do it before. I remember Skyping a few book clubs in earlier years, but certainly the virus has brought this medium into its own. And now that we're all getting used to it, I'm starting to kind of like it. Anyway, Mark asked if I would just start with a little about myself. Like he said, I grew up in Osakis, West Central Minnesota, little farming community on a pretty lake that in the summer always attracts a few tourists and fishing enthusiasts, town of about 1,200 people. My dad was the band director at the high school there, and Mom stayed home to raise the 4 of us. So, picture a normal, kind of straight-laced, reasonably dull 1960s small town upbringing. Osakis had a tiny little movie theater on Main Street called the Empress, which was cramped and smelled bad, and we absolutely loved it until it closed when I was in junior high. It's funny, after Virgil came out, a friend of mine from grade school got in touch with me, a guy I hadn't talked to in 40 years at least. And he said, I grew up dreaming about buying the Empress. It just tore me up inside when they ripped that theater down. And it made me wonder how many of us kids in that little town had that dream. Maybe a lot of us, hard to say. Anyway, I started writing poetry in grade school because I liked making rhymes. I thought it was fun to make rhymes, and I liked meter and rhythm. And then fiction in high school, mostly because I had a couple of really encouraging teachers who were just good at seeing what a kid loved and sort of freeing them up to do it. I'm still in touch with a couple of those teachers, actually. One of them's 95, still sharp. It's great. I went to Morehead State, majored in English, which was not yet a dead end, and also in journalism, which was not yet the enemy of the people. And then in the mid-'80s, I was working for NPR in Bemidji, and my brother Lynn got in touch with me. He was down in Iowa City. He was at the Iowa Writers Workshop studying with some kind of big-time literary talents. Bob Shakochis was there in those days. Ann Patchett was there. And he wrote me a letter and said, hey, I've got this idea for a series of crime novels. You have to remember that this was the mid-'80s. Elmore Leonard was a big deal. Robert B. Parker, Lawrence Block, Sue Grafton was just getting started with her alphabet mysteries, and it was the golden age of the crime novel. And Lynn said, here's my idea. Let's write a series of crime novels about a former Major League Baseball player who retires in disgrace to northern Minnesota, becomes a recluse, and finds himself caught up in solving crimes. And I was so thrilled that he would ask me to do that, because my situation at that time was this. I was writing news for NPR, and in the evenings, I would barricade myself in the spare room in the apartment and work on a novel that I was writing in a big notebook in longhand. And I had piled up over the course of a few months, 120 pages or so. And I had just realized that it was a pile of garbage. I mean, it was a terrible project. It had no redemptive thing about it. It was badly done. I didn't understand what I was doing. All I knew is I wanted to write books, but I had no idea how. And so when Lynn said, why don't we do this? I thought, oh, of course, I can throw away my pile of garbage and I can write a crime novel with somebody who understands what writing is all about. So for me, it was like a door in the air. It was an escape. So Lynn and I, this was before email by quite a long time. So we wrote chapters and we sent them back and forth through the mail. And we wrote 6 novels that were published by Pocket Books and later by Otto Penzler Books between 1990 and 1994. And here's the thing, the crime books were not the big success that we hoped for. We were, fashioning ourselves according to those who were successful at the time, but we couldn't break through. We published them, but we never sold very many. But they did teach us a lot about how to write a good sentence and how to write a good paragraph. Lynn taught me the value of character and landscape and of pacing, all those things. Like I said, when I heard from Lynn, I didn't know what I was doing. But after Lynn and I wrote those 6 books together, and then we stopped because we just ran out of energy. We both had jobs and families. But when I started to write again, and he had the same experience, it wasn't frightening anymore. It wasn't intimidating. We had so many words under our belt. So many pages had passed under the bridge by that time that it was no longer an intimidating thing to do. So that is kind of the story of how I started to do this. And now I'm just going to read a very short bit from Virgil, and then talk a little bit about some of the questions that you guys sent along. This is early pages. This is right after Virgil has been fished out of Lake Superior by his friend Marcus. And this is his dealings with a neurologist who is evaluating him for a brain injury. The neurologist was a Finn named Koskinen, with a broad, decent face and a Teddy Roosevelt mustache. He diagnosed mild traumatic brain injury. This sounded paradoxical, but so did everything else he said. For example, the damage was short-term, but might last quite a while, or possibly longer than that. I could expect within months to regain my balance, as long as I didn't tip over, to experience fewer headaches, or maybe just get used to them. He said over time, I would remember the names of friends and the nearer relatives, that I would recover fine motor skills and pockets of personal history I didn't yet realize had vanished. Despite my confusion, I liked Koskinen immediately. He had the heartening bulk of the aging athlete defeated by pastry. He delivered all news as though it were good. Most welcome was his prediction that language would gradually return. Not that I couldn't speak, but I had to stick to basics. My storehouse of English had been pillaged. At first I thought common nouns were hardest hit, coffee and doorway and so on. But it soon became clear the missing were mostly adjectives. Don't worry, everything will come back, said Dr. Koskinen. Most things probably will. A good many of them might return. There will be at least a provisional rebound. How does this make you feel? I wanted to say relieved or encouraged or at least hopeful, but none of these were available. All I could muster was a mute grin at which the doctor nodded with his mouth open in a vaguely alarming smile. He was right about the language, though. Within weeks, certain prodigal words started filtering home. They came one at a time or in shy, small groups. I remember when Sea Kindly showed up, a sentimental favorite, followed by desiccated and massive. Brusque appeared all by itself, which seemed apt. Merry and boisterous arrived together. This would be a good time to ask for your patience if I use an adjective too many now and again. Even now, some years on, they are still returning. I'm just so glad to see them. I'm just going to tell you forthrightly that writing fiction is really only about delight for me. It's not there to fulfill a mightier purpose than to make me happy. And writing those paragraphs about Koskin and the neurologist, who very much resembled a doctor I had when I was pretty sick a few years ago, just made me happy. It cheered me up, and that's really why I do it. Someone asked why there was so many near-death experiences in the book, why death is such a presence in the book, and I had not thought of it. I don't think anyone asked me that before. It's a good question. And honestly, it wasn't that I wanted to write about death, but during the years this story took shape, death just seemed to be every place I looked. My parents were dying. My wife Robin's parents were dying. We lost all four of them in the space of about 2 years. And none of it was fast, and none of it was easy, and none of it was noble. And in the midst of all that, I also contracted a rare strain of meningitis that took a couple of months to diagnose. So things got a little narrow for me. Things got a little close for a while. I think what a lot of writers do, and I'm definitely one of those, is to write fiction, A, for delight, and B, to understand whatever hole you're in at the time. So you start with a character who is up against something, and before you know it, that story is just like a rope ladder, and you get up every day and you just grab onto that rope ladder. I set it on the North Shore because from the time I first saw the North Shore, I was struck by a certain critical tension that exists here, and I thought it was really attractive. And the tension is between the beauty that exists on the North Shore, which in places on a January morning when the sun comes up is so gorgeous that it hurts your eyes. And so there's this incredible beauty, but at the same time, there's this amazing difficulty in making a living here, especially when you go north and east of Duluth up the shore. And it's just very difficult to find a job that will pay a living wage. Even when there is a boom economy, you know it's going to bust before too long. And that tension is such an attractive place to set a story. Somebody asked which town I used for a model. And it's better to ask which one I didn't use for a model. I mean, there are bits and pieces of Silver Bay. There's a water tower from Beaver Bay. Grand Marais is represented not just by World's Best Donuts, but by other things as well. 2 harbors. I didn't want to model it after just one town because then you have to be accurate and you're going to get all kinds of grief when you inevitably screw up and get something wrong. That's just setting yourself up for failure. But what all those places have in common, I think, is that thread of tension. I'll never forget doing an interview when I was with public radio, doing interviews up in I don't remember if it was Silver Bay or one of the other, it might have been Beaver Bay actually. And there was a former miner who lived in the town who had lost his job some months before, and I was talking to him about that. And he basically told me about houses that you could buy in that community for $12,000 that were a block off the lake. And at the time, as a young reporter, I just thought, oh my gosh, what can I do to raise $12,000 so I can live in this place? And then I thought, well, how am I going to live here? What will I do to stay? How will I feed my family if I do that? So they were just up against it. And places that are up against it are so often the ones that are remote and gorgeous and exactly where you want to be, but how? So that's why I set it on the shore and used those towns as models. Someone asked about whether Rune, the old Norwegian guy, is modeled on any Norwegian mythical characters. And he sort of is, he kind of is, but in a very general way. I didn't want to be, again, too specific about that, because then I think you set yourself up for disappointment. Odin, of course, is often accompanied by ravens and raven imagery. Loki, the trickster, is referenced in this story as well, with a bit of shape-shifting and mischief. But more than anything, the Norwegian mythos I was trying to draw from was the feeling I got from a trip to Tromsø that Robin and I took years ago above the Arctic Circle, up in the Lofoten Islands, when I was making notes for the book. And this is a part of the world where the sun goes down in late November. It doesn't come back up for 2 months or more. And you feel that there. You feel this this incipient kind of strangeness, a sense of the larger world kind of receding, of the usual reality being overcome. So when you're there and you read about the legends of great fish rising out from the fjords and beguiling children who are walking along the shore, it doesn't seem like legend when you're there. It doesn't even seem unlikely. It seems like something that happened yesterday. It's like you're reading the news instead of mythology. The atmosphere has an effect, or did on me, of making you childlike in a way. If you let it, it makes you pliable. It opens you up. And that was the sense that I hoped Rune would bring to the story and to Virgil's life. I think Virgil, as he rebuilds himself after the accident, needs somebody like Rune to become what he needs to become and to let go of some of the baggage that he lets go of over the course of the novel. Do I see myself in Virgil or any of the other characters? Oh, yeah. Look, Virgil is easily the most the character most like me that I've ever written about. I could be coy and say, no, none of my stuff is autobiographical. The truth is, all of it's autobiographical. I have a pretty large imagination, but it's not large enough to just become somebody else. I'm just unable to do that. So I tend to write about people who are grounded in some aspect of my own Nordic personality. So, Virgil is at heart an optimist. He wants to expect the best. The lessons he has been taught in life don't always encourage him. There's a lot of me in that guy. Not completely, of course. He's the sort of man who has been waiting his whole life to really fall in love. I fall in love with things and ideas and people really easily. I have to be careful with myself, because it would be easy for me to just go full tilt on many little things. So that gives me a base to draw from that is very wide, but very shallow. So Virgil is kind of like that, I think. Somebody asked about the kites and the movies and the symbolism in the movies I chose and the kites that I chose to write about. And I think some of the kites are pretty clearly symbolic. The giant fish that refers to what's going on in the story with the sturgeon and with Adam Lear, and with Galen and his dad. The kite anvil that hangs like a sort of whimsical threat in the sky. I think my favorite kite is either the bicycle or it's the fireplace with the waving flames and the chair next to it that looks as if it's just tilted a sitter into the fire. There's some dark humor in there that I kind of like. But again, for the most part, the kites were just there to delight me. It was really fun to write about them. I discovered a kite maker. Oh, Lord. There's a kite maker up in Montreal. His name is Trepanier, French-Canadian, and he makes these kites that are just insanely beautiful. And they fly. All of them fly. They could be hanging in galleries, but he doesn't hang them in galleries. He hangs them in the sky. They're just brilliant artwork. I mean, the guy should be in museums, but instead he just goes out and surrounds himself with kite flyers and puts his kites in the air. It's just phenomenal. If you Google Robert Trepanier, you'll find what I'm talking about. I discovered his kites in a book, like a coffee table book of kites. And some of the kites in my book I just stole straight from Trepanier. The dog kite, that is one of Ruin's first kites. If you want to see what that kite looks like, Google this guy Trepanier. You'll see the dog kite. That's the one I'm talking about. Just a gorgeous kite. He always flies that right next to a kite that looks like a fire plug. It's kind of perfect. He's got a sense of humor. Very nice. The movies, they were picked fairly carefully as well, and specifically, I fell real hard for the idea of a cache of illegal films living in the attic. There is, I think, significant magic attached to that for me, that idea that you can enter a closet that you thought was locked, but that isn't. You just have to pull a little extra hard. And when you go in and turn on the light is buzzing, and it reveals these shelves of silver canisters. And those canisters are inhabited by the celluloid versions of Brando and Alec Guinness and Marlene Dietrich and Rock Hudson. Come on. I mean, who doesn't want that kind of surprise in their life? And it was also important, I think, that Virgil be given a choice about whether he holds on to that contraband or gives it up. Part of the choice he faces is whether he's going to throw off, how much of his old self he's going to throw off to be freed into the life that we see him beginning to lead by the end of the story. There has to be an arc, there has to be character change, I think, for a story to be satisfying. And so the movies played, to me, kind of an important part in that. So I think that sort of covers the questions that people sent along, unless I missed something. But if anybody wants to talk any aspect of this book or other books or just what you're reading right now, I'm all ears.
How do you spell Trepanier?
It's Trepanier.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Leif, there was another question about the ravens, or about the raven, and what inspired you to have the raven attracted to Rune. And maybe you inkled at it when you were talking about Odin a few minutes ago.
Yes, right. That was part of it. I wanted Rune to feel in some ways like an unearthly character, or like a character on whom the usual rules of American physics do not apply. And part of that is just simply his attitude. Part of it is when he first shows up at Virgil's apartment above the theater, he reaches into his satchel and he just pulls out all this food, and it's just one thing after another. And I was thinking about all the great like feasting scenes in Wind in the Willows, or some of those great kind of fairy tale type stories. You think about like in The Hobbit, when there's a variety of just great feasts where unlikely things get pulled out of unlikely places. And I wanted very much to get that feel. The raven was part of that. Birds who are attracted to him, that also draws on the sort of Saint Francis of Assisi kind of imagery. I wanted him to be a little bit of a holy fool who has access to a kind of non-ambitious decency that I think most of us kind of aspire to. Also, when I started this, I had been talking with my son John, who reports for NPR now, about this idea he had. That I noticed that he was treating birds and the whole idea of birds as though they were holy beings. And so I was talking to him about it, and he said, "I think birds might be angels." And he was pretty young at the time, but I thought that was a really interesting idea, really kind of a cool idea, that birds were all around us all the time, and they have short little lives. It doesn't take much to, they fly into windows and hurt themselves. And yet, and what if they were holy? What if they were angels? And then I read a really terrific novel by Karl Ove Knausgaard, who wrote the My Struggle series of sort of novels / memoirs. But before he wrote those, he wrote a book called A Time for Everything. And that book is about angelic beings. It's a retelling of certain parts of the Old Testament. And it's a brilliant book. And one thing you realize by the end of that story is that the birds all around us are the remnants of angels who came to earth in the early days. And it's a wonderful novel, and it's full of great ideas. He has one of those incredibly fertile minds that just tosses off great ideas on every page. And that was one of them. And so what I wanted with Room was to associate him with things that are on another plane from humanity. But thanks for asking that question.
It's really been fun to get the backstory of your thinking of some of the characters.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me? Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed that so much. It adds an extra depth. I've been listening to it, and I feel like all these characters are part of my life.
Oh, thank you. And doesn't that narrator do a good job?
He does. It's wonderful. It makes it come alive, frankly.
I thought he did a wonderful job.
What's that?
I thought he did a wonderful job. When the audio publisher said that they wanted to do an audiobook, I was really thrilled. I was hoping there would be an audiobook. And I made a bid to do the audio myself. I thought it'd be really fun. So I asked them if I could. And they said, no, you won't be as good as this guy. And I have to admit, I think they were right. I think he did a better job than I would have done. I think he did a superb bit of voice. And I love the kind of slightly exaggerated Scandinavian Minnesotan accent that he did.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Made me think of William H. Macy in Fargo if William had just dialed it back a little bit. I thought it was really tremendous. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Oh, so much. It took a while. It took me a bit to get into it.
Yeah.
And then once I'm into it, I feel like I'm living it.
Oh, good. That's a good effect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear me?
Ricky, go ahead.
Leif, talking about who does the narrating, for me, the fact that you did what you did, lived where you lived, observed what you did with all these different people, for me, gave this book and all the characters a spirit. They were united. An example, the kite. Nobody refused to hold the string. And that kite and Rune and the person holding the string, there was a spirit there. And it was in each one of these characters. And what occurred to me is this the good part of people struggling? And as you pointed out, these towns where it's tough to make a living. So then, do they go within for their meaning for life rather than jobs, money, competing. That's how it hit me.
Thank you, Ricky.
It is unstable. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's a terrific observation, Ricky. I think you really tuned into something there. And I think there is probably really an element of truth to what you say. I did not think about it in terms that specific or analytical. You know, what happens when you start to really kind of get into a story is it sort of takes hold. And then the characters just sort of do what they do, and you're more like a transcriber than a writer. One thing that connects to what you're saying is that when I was about 2/3 of the way done, Robin said, my wife is named Robin. She's my first reader and my best, I think. And she said, I've noticed that everyone who comes in contact with Rune takes something good away from the contact. And everyone who comes in contact with Adam Lear takes away something bad. And I hadn't realized that was happening. But when she pointed it out, I realized it was true. And then I was able to sort of, for the last third of the book, concentrate on that. It gave me a real leg up when I was finishing the story to sort of understand, oh, sometimes it's helpful when you're part of the way through to have someone focus it for you. That really assisted me in that. But I think your observation about when things are tough on the exterior, then the interior is where the journey happens. I was a little nervous about writing a story that takes place in a community and doesn't leave, because my other two books were both road stories. And road stories are filled with the external. And there's like you're working with a mat in a way, you're working with a net, because if things start to get boring, you just get them back on the road and the scenery changes and there are new characters. And I thought, what if I get halfway through my little town on the North Shore story and it's boring? Then what? But it didn't turn out that way, at least for me, because of what you said. And there's still a journey, but it was all interior. And I appreciate that remark, Ricky.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to get your response.
This is fun.
Debbie?
Leif, I'm from Bemidji, where I know Emily from the Watermark.
Hey!
For many years, yes.
Everybody.
I have to say that what drew me in is the poetic way that you write. If you don't mind, if I read just a couple of sentences. From page 9, you're talking about ruin, and you say, he had 100 merry crinkles at his eyes and a long haul sadness in his shoulders. I can just stay with some of those sentences. And then on page 14, you say, now he just looked ancient and beleaguered. The left side of his face was oddly crumpled. How had I not noticed it before? It was half an inch lower than the right, as if it had slid downhill. Your way of describing, for me, you are just such a poet, and I just love your descriptions.
Well, thank you so much. That's wonderful to hear. My phone is ringing and I've got to go turn it off. I'll be right back.
It's fun to see everyone in the meantime. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I'm glad. I was not sure if you were going to make it tonight.
Hi, Phyllis. Yeah, we didn't.
No,
we weren't there.
We're at a timeshare in Sedona, but you got connectivity, you got your laptop, and here we are.
Are you seeing the Beans? Do you know Sue and Larry Bean?
Saw Sue this afternoon.
Oh, that's so great. I say hello to her.
We had lunch with them about 2 months ago when we were in Sedona before. They look great. We saw their beautiful house here. Oh, fabulous. So, yeah, small world.
And it's off the grid,
It's
totally off the grid.
Yeah, pretty special. So it's just great to see everybody. We miss you, we miss you, we miss you.
We
We miss you too.
Oh, thank
We
you.
miss you too. But I wanted, Phyllis, so you know, we had a little discussion before you joined. The book club is going to continue through the winter months since we can Zoom.
Yay.
Yes. So October is read a book and share your book, because we don't have a list at the moment, and make some suggestions now, you know, so that we can vote on them and have the rest of the winter reading list up by November, before November.
Great.
And what's the date for the October meeting?
The same, third Tuesday, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, 5 o'clock our time.
Okay, 5 o'clock your time. Middle of the night if I'm traveling.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions?
I maybe didn't post mine. Leif, you mentioned in your introduction that you had written books with your brother, I think, and then you'd also had another writing partner. I don't remember who that was, but can you talk about that process of what's that like to write with another person, and how do you go about writing a book with another person?
Well, for Lynn and I, it was pretty easy, because we were, he's 5 years older than me. And so I did not expect to be as good at it as he was. And he knew more about writing than I did. So I just went in like an apprentice. I went in like I had everything to learn and nothing to teach. And that turned out to be true. And so Lynn taught me without any feeling of, I guess what I'm saying is there was no competition between us. And I think that is maybe crucial. I mean, I think that's why we were able to do it for so long. And to write, 6 books that way is because if he said, well, here's why this is a bad paragraph, I didn't feel defensive. I just learned what he had to say. Honestly, without Lynn, I doubt I would have known how to approach this. I don't think I would be I don't think I would have a writing career if he and I hadn't done that together. Because if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have instruction, I took a couple of creative writing classes in college, but it didn't tell me anything about how to write anything, something as long as a book. So, as far as the mechanics of how it worked, what we would do is we wanted about a 250-page book. We would spend one weekend coming up with a plot about our hero who lived in northern Minnesota. And then we would divide up the plot into 30 chapters, roughly. And we would write what happened in each chapter on a single note card. Then Lynn would take chapters 1 through 5 and write them simultaneously while I was writing chapters 6 through 10. So he knew where to leave off and I knew where to start. And then we would send those groups of chapters through the postal service. And I would receive them in Bemidji or in Crosby, where we moved to. And he would receive them down in Iowa City. And then I would try to make his pages sound like mine. And he would try to make my pages sound like his. And we sort of met in the middle. So, it was a pretty painless and I would say really fun experience. Those books are long out of print, but we're bringing them back as ebooks because Lynn had this experience this summer where he dug out the old books, and he was between books himself. He's got a new novel coming out in October that everyone should read. It's terrific. It's called American Gospel. But he was between projects, so he got out the old mysteries, read them, thought, these aren't as bad as I remember. So since we got the rights back, I think we're going to put new covers on them and sell them as as ebooks over Amazon. We haven't done that yet, but I think we're going to pretty soon. It was a great experience, and I learned a ton by doing it. I would recommend collaboration to anybody.
I have a question. This is Robin. Do you still work for NPR? And then the second question is, how do you structure your day? I mean, if you have a real job and then write, how do you structure your day? And the last comment I want to make is, as a person, you're very humble, but very gracious. And I think you do a wonderful job on this book club participation.
Oh, just keep on talking. No, thank you. Actually writing has been my only job since 2000. I guess 2000. I sold a book called Peace Like a River to Grove Atlantic in 2000. And they paid me enough that I took a year's leave of absence from public radio. And then during that year, the book did really well, so I just quit. And so I've been writing full time since then. You'd never know it by my meager output. I've published 3 novels in 17 years, which is
They're all spectacular, though.
It's dreadfully slow. I'm really hoping to have like a really good decade now. But I structure my day probably the way most of you do. I get up in the morning when I wake. Sometimes it's 5:30, sometimes it's 7. And I make coffee and I write 5 or 6 pages of just sort of longhand in a notebook. Not fiction, just about whatever I'm thinking about. I happened across a really spectacular program a few years ago called The Artist's Way. And what I took from that is the practice of writing morning pages, where you just get up and you spill onto the page. It's important to do it in longhand. There's something about the tactile process that sort of gives you a freedom. And so I write in longhand for 30 or 40 minutes in the morning, and that kind of primes the pump. Then I usually have a coffee with Robin, maybe a little breakfast, and I write until the juice runs out. So sometimes I write until 1 in the afternoon, and sometimes 7 in the evening. It just depends on how well it's going. COVID has actually been sort of good for me because I'm easily distractible. I'm a very distractible person. And I also am looking for excuses not to write all the time. Because there's something intimidating about it. Even if you're doing morning pages, you're still kind of, you come to when it's time to do the work and it's like, what if I got nothing today? It's always a possibility. But COVID took away the distractions. Suddenly you couldn't, run out to the restaurant and people couldn't come and visit, and nobody in the house but us too. And so on March 1st, we went into lockdown, and I said to Robin, look, I think I'm just going to take the opportunity. I've been making notes for a story for 1.5 years. I'm going to see how fast I can write this draft. And I wrote the draft in 3 months. I've never done anything like that before. And it's really rough. I mean, my first drafts are awful. I subscribe to, oh man, what's her name? She wrote Bird by Bird, Anne Lamott. Anne Lamott writes brilliantly about the concept of the shitty first draft. That's what I write. Terrible first drafts full of spelling mistakes and half-formed ideas and no punctuation. And they're a mess, but you're just spilling it as fast as you can. And I went through after the 3 months, I read all the pages, and I'm pretty confident there's something there I'm going to be happy with. So now I'll take a much longer time, and I'll probably finish the second draft in February, I think, and then we'll see if anybody wants it. But that's how I structure my day.
Leif, I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, does somebody else want one? Somebody want to go?
Go ahead, Ricky.
Oh, does your wastebasket get really full fast? And do you edit a lot in your head? And are your dreams pretty vivid? You said in the first thing in the morning, you really write.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about how that whole thing works with you.
Yeah. Yes, I throw away lots of stuff every day. There are times I throw away so much that I can paralyze myself. When I was writing my second novel, my Western, So Brave, Young, and Handsome, I would write 1,000 pages a day and I would throw away sometimes all 1,000 the next day. That was a painfully slow novel to write. I've tried to get better about that and be less of a perfectionist. But the thing is, I don't want a sentence to get away without, if I'm going to publish a sentence, I want it to do exactly what it should do. I don't want to waste any words. I don't want to waste any sentences. And I want, if possible, for every paragraph to sing a little song. Because I feel like it's a lot. Look, we're in the 21st century and people's attention spans are shrinking all the time. A lot of people don't read books anymore. I sort of feel like it's a lot to ask. And so I heard George Saunders say a brilliant thing. He said, why would you ask someone to read a book that doesn't contain a little present for them, right? And so I try to put a little gift on every page, a little present, something that might perk someone up, or be a joyful turn of phrase. You know, it just seems like the least I can do. But that means I'm kind of slow. I'd love to be faster, but I don't know how fast I can be. I think I got off on a rabbit trail there.
It was great. Thank you.
And my dreams are vivid, by the way. Sometimes they're so vivid I'm not sure when I woke up.
Mm-hmm. That is, yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I don't have a question, but if you don't mind, I would like to share one other passage when you talk about, description and a presence, and I'm thinking of the poetry. This is from page 9, and you're again describing ruin. He pulled a kitchen match from his pocket, thumbnailed it, and relit his pipe, which, let me tell you, held the most fragrant tobacco. Brisk autumn cedar and coffee and orange peel. A few sharp puffs brought it crackling, and he held it up to watch smoke drift off the bowl. The smoke ghosted straight up and hung there, undecided. For me, you just gave me a gift of being a little girl watching my grandfather sit in his chair, light his pipe, do the whole thing. I could smell the fragrance of the tobacco, and it was that was a gift to me. And sometimes if we don't have the opportunity to just tell you that paragraph was just brilliant for me.
Oh, thanks so much. The thing is, whenever someone, just for an example, a lot of things in life are this way, but just for an example, if someone is smoking a pipe and you're walking past, this happened last week in Memorial Park in Bayfield. I was just walking over to City Dock from the marina, and somebody was sitting on one of those benches smoking a pipe. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's the best smell I've ever smelled. I mean, when I was in college, I smoked a pipe because I wanted to look like an English major. But man, I haven't really smelled many pipes since then because people don't really smoke them. But I actually went over and said, thank you so much for smoking. This is a wonderful smell. You're improving life for everyone around you. The guy's like, people never say that to me.
I did that once in Grand Marais. I just accidentally smelled someone smoking a pipe, and I went over and I said, that's exactly what my grandpa's pipe smells like. And it was just so wonderful. He gave me the name and I wish I would have written it down because I didn't. And of course it's gone.
Oh, I know what you mean. It's a wonderful scent, and man, the world is full of this stuff.
Thank you.
It's 8 o'clock, so we've been at it for an hour. It's been wonderful.
So
hang on, I got another question.
Okay.
I wanted to know if any of the movie houses have come to you, or anybody's wanted to make movies of this book or any other books.
Well, my first book, Peace Like a River, is under constant surveillance by movie studios, but never seems to get any traction. We've had some close calls with that one. And I'd love to see somebody make a film of one of my books. I think that'd be enormous fun. But I can tell you I don't lose any sleep over it. My book agent gave me a piece of really good advice 20 years ago. And I don't know where he got this. I'm not sure it was original with him, but what he said was this. There are two countries. There's novel country and there's film country. The two are divided by a tall fence of barbed wire. Sometimes somebody from movie country will sort of back up to the fence with a bag of money and heave it over the fence to novel country. And when that happens, you pick up the money and you run the other direction. What you don't do is dig under the fence and try to get to the place where the money comes from, because it will end in tears. I've always remembered that. I think there are writers for whom that boundary is not real. Stephen King, Harlan Coben, writers I really like, man, people I really admire, and they've made the system work for them in ways I can't fathom. So I'm just going to let the movie people do the movie thing. And if it ever comes knocking at my door, I'll happily answer. But I'm never trying to get into that country and be a citizen there. I don't think it would work. That being said, let them come. Now, I've got a question for Madeline Island people. And that is, for a long time, I've wanted to write a novel that would be set on an island, because islands are such inherent keepers of secrets, especially in the off season. For a long time, I was thinking, what I want to do is go to an island in the Lofotens, one of the Lofoten Islands in Norway, that are so deserted in the wintertime. But I think that would be A, really expensive, and B, nobody wants Americans now. It's difficult to go and spend months abroad in ways that it didn't used to be. And so what I'm wondering is, on Madeline Island, would this be a good place for me to come and just sort of spend one winter, say from Thanksgiving to April 1st, and just sort of inhabit an Airbnb or something? And what life goes on Madeline Island in the wintertime?
So my name is Betsy, and I would like to tell you that my brother Chris, who spent a winter up here, said that is one of the most amazing, incredible, and unusual things you can ever do. You put a lot of joy in your writing, and you put a lot of learning about everything that's there, and this island has everything that's there for you to come and find. So I'm all for it. Yeah.
And Debbie Knaff can tell you all about it. And my husband and I spent 19 years there year round.
Wow.
And we loved the winters. The winters were our favorite part until the shoveling and everything got a little bit too much for Burke. But it's a wonderful place in the winter, isn't it, Debbie?
Yep, it sure is. I've been here little over 20 years now. Full-time resident, and it's pretty magical.
So what is it like? What is it like, Debbie, in that shoulder season where you can't get across by boat very easily, but there's not ice roads yet? There's not a way to get there.
It's like being in a group snowmobile where you're bouncing across the ice and you're covering your ears and you're having a blast, and it's the best.
It's the wind sled season.
It's our wind sled season.
Uh-huh.
And because in order to get to work, I would, for about 18 years, I would trundle, with my warmest clothes down the hill to get on the wind sled at 7:10 in the morning.
Wow.
And, there'd be others bundled up coming, and we'd get inside that warm little cabin and hunker down together, kind of body to body, and put things on our ears, and then go tearing across the ice, hoping that the ice is going to really be strong today. And it's a form of community that once we started having the ice road, and the ice road was, maybe 4 to 6 weeks sometimes or longer, I got really lonesome. I was anxious to get back to the wind sled.
No kidding.
Because getting in my car at my house and just driving across the lake to work separated us all again. So we were all isolated from each other. Where
a little
traveling on the ferry or traveling on the wind sled kept us all in community, and that's really the neatest thing about winter, is we get to be this really small group that really relies on each other and shares news and joys and, interests. And somebody would bring muffins on the wind sled in the morning at 7 o'clock, or cookies, or there'd be a joke that everybody would share. I mean, it's pretty neat.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I feel a little bit homesick just listening to your description.
It's pretty neat. It'd be worth living here for a while.
I'm going to have to investigate this.
Yeah.
I'm at the point in this book where I'm starting to think about the next one, and so I'm just making notes. But this might be something I have to look into.
And we have some very interesting characters on the island. Everybody's laughing. They know who they are.
Well,
one of them's name is Arnie. No, we have some great folks here that just, you would get inspired very much by our interesting, take a big city and all the unique kind of people that are there, and then filter that down to all those characteristics in about 100 people.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's exactly the sort of dynamic that I think would be a lot of fun to write a book about. And of course, the sailing season now is just about over. But we're over on a boat called the Robin Lee on D Dock at the Apostle Islands Marina, and we'll be there next year too. Any of you who happen to be going through should just drop down, say hello, and I'd love to just have a cup of coffee with you and find out more about living on Madeline. Ask some more questions. If anyone who would like to, I'd love the chance to do that.
Leif, did you say D-Doc and Robert E. Lee?
Oh no, it's the Robin Lee. That's my wife's name.
Oh, the Robin Lee. Okay, got it.
Robin Lee on D-Dock. Yeah, slip D9.
Okay.
We're just down from Sin and Tom.
Oh, okay. I'll stop and see you the next time I'm.
Yeah, do it. Absolutely.
Is that on the island, you're saying, or on
no, Apostle?
The Apostle Islands Marina in Bayfield.
In Bayfield.
Thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate being able to join you tonight.
Oh, you're so welcome. We are so pleased that you could join us, and it's been a great session. Really fun and interesting listening to you, and then also hearing the reactions from the other members. Susie, did you have any final comment? You mentioned about expanding the book club and reading a book in October that we each choose individually. But will an email go out to everybody soliciting ideas for the next list?
Paula?
Are you there?
Paula's on
It's
mute.
Paula. Oh, she's on mute. Can you unmute yourself,
I
Paula?
unmuted it. It takes me a minute here.
Okay. Okay, that's good.
I
Can you do
send out an
that?
email. October and November are kind of hectic times for me, so I don't know, I might miss something, but if you jog
That's
my
okay.
memory, tell me what to say, I'll send it out.
Okay, that would be great. I'll give you just a reminder. And yeah, everybody who can join us, we'll see what happens in the winter. Like I said, we stopped doing it because we were getting 4 participants live, and it was a long way to drive to just be with 4 of us. But I think this has turned out to be a wonderful way to meet. And I envision our winter having lots of difficulty with socializing for many of us. And I think it's a nice way to be able to socialize. So, and Leif, you're welcome to join us.
Oh, maybe I will.
I would never have understood how meaningful this could be. Thank you so much for introducing us to this.
Yes, it was fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's such a well-written
This really
book.
has been
That's what
fun.
I like.
I want to meet you all. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
again, Leif. Thanks everybody else. And
Good to see all of you on the island. I miss you.
Yeah.
just
Yes.
meet at the post
Your hair's
office.
so curly. Like it.
Now, how do you like that crazy hair that's come back, huh?
Yeah, it's good.
That's
Good night,
good, Marge.
everybody.
It's nice to see you, Margie. Good night.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Leave.